Good morning and welcome to the new edition of Frontiers of Knowledge. We used to read in science fiction that human mind can be controlled. And then we had Pavlov who said that our reflexes can be conditioned. But that's a process which is a long process. And that is, once you are conditioned to one thing, it becomes your second habit. But imagine that the government wants, or the people in authority want, they can manage to change your brain, to change the way you think, your very thought process. And not by a long conditioning and not by implanting a chip, but by just stimulating your brain. The way your brain is stimulated, and that can be done easily. Today, the stimulation is done by applying electrodes to your skull, no penetration. And tomorrow, the possibility is that the waves are sent to a mass of people, making them think the way the authorities like. The reality of the brave new world, the reality of the big boss, or the big brother watching you, not only watching you, but making you think the big brother wants, is something very scary. And yet, it's a part of our everyday existence, and future is not off, as the very recent study in Boston University has revealed. Imagine you can improve your mental attitude and performance by directly stimulating specific parts of the brain. And that very application of stimulation of the brain changes your thought process. And the experiments have shown how the person's ability to learn, to think, and to control their behavior is within the realms of possibility, as shown by the Boston University process led by Robert Reinhardt, the scientist. What they call it is high-definition transcranial alternating current stimulation. Now, current stimulation today is applied by the electrodes, but it can be, as I said, time is not far off, as this research shows, can be sent by a laser beam. And they also are saying that it can also be possibly sent by a sound wave. And in case it is sent by a sound wave, then it can be a really big instrument in the hands of governments who can manipulate your mind and your thought. Now what they do is they apply this high definition transcranial alternating current stimulation to turbocharge your brain, two parts of the brain that influence how you work. If you make an error, this brain area fires. If you tell, it will tell you to make an error, it also fires. It is something surprises you. This brain region also fires, the cranial region. And as a matter of fact, he says that the medial frontal cortex is the alarm bell of the brain. And the scientists seek to control this portion, the frontal cortex. Reinhardt and his colleagues found that stimulating this region as well as the lateral prefrontal cortex could change how a person learns, acts, and reacts. These may be two most fundamental brain areas involved: the frontal cortex and the prefrontal cortex, these two areas, because they control your thought process, as they say. And the persons involved with executive control and function and self-control can be so manipulated that it goes in other hands. It's like, your computer being operated by a third person when you permit him remote access. So your brain is giving remote access to these manipulators, and they change the way you think. And it was quite an interesting experience, quite an interesting experiment. They took 30 healthy people, very healthy, the way you are, and each was wearing a soft cap, and the cap had electrodes. Electrodes was not visible. They were collapsible, flexible, not metallic the way you wear them, I use them. And those electrodes conveyed the stimulation. The test was simple. Every one of those 30 people had to press a button every 1.7 seconds. In the first 3 rounds, the researcher either cranked up the synchronicity between the two lobes, or disrupted the synchronicity, or did nothing. And all the time, their brain activity was being monitored by EEG. And they saw that whenever they upped the two lobes to synchronize them, or they disrupted it, the brain waves upped, fell down. There were significant results. And the subjects learned faster and fewer mistakes. So as the stimulation went, the brain waves upped, and the learning of the brain was much superior, learning the way they wanted it. They conveyed it. This is what you want to do. And can't you believe it? When the deception was there, the big brains became slow. Now imagine a scene that some agitators are agitating against the established authority. A sound wave goes and envelops them, stimulates their brain to shout in favor of the government. And then they are disrupted and told again, attack the instigators or the promoters of that demonstration. The tables are turned. Now suppose the other scenario. Agitators are going, there's a cordon of police, and those agitators have the facility of stimulating the brains of the police. So send a sound message and tell them not to do anything. And then these agitators can ransack the building and destroy the authority. Imagine if this source or this technology falls into the hands of terrorists. They can easily control your law and order forces and wreak havoc. Consider if it happens to fall in the hands of the people who are opposing you, or if you're at war. Your whole army, navy, air force can be made to come to stand still and even reverse their action and act against their own country. Now coming back to that experiment, there was another surprise. These 30 participants took an adjusted version of the test. This group started with their brain disrupted, so the waves were down, and then the moment they were stimulated, their brains reacted with much more fiercely and much more quickly. The reaction time was reduced to milliseconds, and there was a perfect synchronization between the levels of learning and the changed behavior. The minutest stimulation elicited from them a behavior that was expected. And Reinhardt himself says, we were shocked by the results, how quickly the effects of this stimulation could be reversed. Now imagine again, let's go to the scenario. Does the terrorists go, stimulate you to go and attack, and you innocent citizens become the persons who are really guilty because your brains are being stimulated to attack, to kill. And when you come to your senses, you don't know what you have done. And you don't know what was the cause of your wanton and unwarranted behavior. There was another test. This team is the first to identify how the millions of cells in the medial frontal cortex and the prefrontal cortex communicate each other with a low frequency brain waves. And this thought control process is controlling those low frequency waves. The science is much stronger and precise than it was earlier. But the question that faces this new development is, how far can you go with this technology? If it's enhancement of the brain function, it's welcome. Who doesn't want brain function to be enhanced? This could produce the same results as nootropic or smart drugs, which enhance the capability of your brain waves to work faster in a more comprehensive manner. But there are potential side effects. Apart from the technology being misused by the people who are anti-human, anti-government, anti-establishment, whatever anti, or by the governments to manipulate you to be the stooges and the slaves of the government, there is another danger. What would be the potential side effects of even innocent work like stimulating the brain to enhance its working? Drugs do have a side effect. Having access to this technology is in fact a game changer. It's a new frontier of knowledge. Controlling your mind was one thing, you did it with the drugs, hallucinated drugs. But to control your thought process with the aid of stimulation, which today is through the electrodes, collapsible electrodes, and as Reinhardt says, that within 6 months they'll be able to convert these rays into sound waves. The speed of the sound, you are aware. So that minor buzzing of the waves coming with the vibration of the wave, hitting your cortex and make you do the bidding of the person who is sending the waves is a terrifying one. It's good one if it's used for the good purpose. Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, and slowing down of the brain might be the thing of the past. But the horrible scenarios which have unfolded at least tell us that there is a danger. The only thing that can be done is that this technology which has been developed is kept as a top secret to be available only to the medical profession, not even to the government. Let's be very clear. Every government can have people who want to use their powers for personal and not for the societal gains. And if that thing happens, this can be a real tragedy. And this frontier of knowledge can become a disaster for the human mind. But the world is changing. The new dawn is about to be there. The artificial intelligence and this ability to monitor, manipulate, and control the thought process. These are on the horizon. So be prepared for the brave new world. Thank you.